Imagine you just help someone with everyday tasks without expecting anything in return. And the next morning, there's a fancy Rolls Royce with a huge bow outside your house. Does that sound unbelievable? But that's exactly what happened to one amazing girl who did just one good deed. Want to find out how it happened? Stay tuned. You'll be shocked. Friends, as we begin this inspiring story, let's make our corner of the internet even warmer. Write in the comments what your name is and where you're watching us from. We'd love to learn about each and every one of you. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions are incredibly important to us. You are what help our channel grow and share such inspiring stories with even more people. We appreciate each and every one of you because without you, this channel wouldn't be possible. Thank you for being with us. And remember, you are our main motivation to keep going. It was quiet and cool outside, a light breeze ruffling the leaves on the trees as the little girl named Amara walked home after school. Her backpack was dragging a little on her shoulders, but she paid it no mind, thinking about the fact that dinner tonight would be her mother's favorite meal. But her thoughts were interrupted when she noticed a figure ahead of her, an elderly woman. She stood on the sidewalk, trying to shift the heavy grocery bags from one hand to the other. The woman looked tired, her face covered with sweat, and her breathing heavy. It was as if time had frozen. Amara instantly realized that this grandmother needed help. She looked around. No one was stopping to help. People were passing by, absorbed in their own concerns. For a moment, the girl wondered if she should interfere, but something inside her twitched. "Hey, need help?" came her soft voice. The woman raised her head, looked at Amara in surprise, and stood still for a moment. Then she smiled, straightening up slightly as if she had forgotten about the pain in her back. "Oh, thank you, dear. I can't handle these bags on my own anymore," she replied, struggling to catch her breath. Amara quickly grabbed the heaviest bags and stepped forward. "I'll help you carry them home. It's not hard," she said with a warm smile. The grandmother ran her hand through her gray hair, wiping the sweat from her forehead, and looked at the girl gratefully. They walked down the street together, their steps unhurried, and their conversation unexpectedly light and sincere. Amara didn't know that this simple gesture would change her life forever. Amara was always in a hurry to get home after school because her mother was waiting for her at home, cooking her favorite dishes. She could already imagine the smell of fresh baked goods that usually filled the house. But looking at the old woman struggling to hold on to the heavy bags, Amara felt her heart squeeze. Without thinking, Amara turned off the sidewalk and came closer. Her small figure, dressed in her school uniform, was right next to her frail grandmother, whose age was clearly not enough to support her weight. "Let me help you," the girl offered, with a genuine smile, already reaching for the bags. "Oh, honey, you're so kind, but this is too hard for you." Grandma tried to refuse, though her tired hands were shaking. "Don't worry, I'm strong, honestly. And I also have time," Amara replied confidently, even though deep down she knew her mom was expecting her for dinner. She knew it didn't matter, though. Being there for someone who needed help was what really mattered. The older woman smiled a little confused and finally agreed. "Thank you, little girl. People rarely offer help for nothing these days," she said, handing the girls some of the packages. Amara felt the weight of the packages pulling her down slightly, But she didn't even think of backing away. Instead, she added, "It's okay. Where's your house? Let me help you get there." The woman, softened by the girl's warm gaze, pointed to a small house at the end of the street. They moved down the road together, talking about what she had bought. Amara learned that her grandmother liked to make vegetable stew and bake bread, just like her mother. At this point, it was as if time had stopped for Amara. She didn't think about what was waiting for her at home or what someone might envy her. All she cared about was making this woman's day a little easier. Grandma couldn't contain her smile as she looked at the girl. "You're a real catch, honey. The world would be a much better place with people like you," she said. Amara smiled back, feeling her heart fill with warmth. She didn't know that her simple act of kindness had already begun to change destinies. They walked slowly down the sunny street, the breeze ruffling the edges of Amara's school skirt. The bags in her hands were tugging downward, but the girl held them tightly, trying not to let on that they were a little heavy. The older woman walked beside her, occasionally glancing back at Amara, her eyes beaming with gratitude. "You're such a kind girl," the woman began, breaking the silence. "It's rare nowadays to meet someone who's willing to help. Everyone's in such a hurry, and you stopped. What's your name?" "My name is Amara," the girl replied with a smile, panting slightly from the effort. "And you are?" "Mary," the woman said, her voice sounding soft but a little tired. "I'm 78 now, and every trip to the store is like a little adventure for me. Living alone, things get a little more complicated." "You live alone?" Amara asked in surprise, looking down at her. "Yes, for several years now. My husband died 5 years ago, and the kids live in other cities, far away. Everyone has their own worries." Mary shrugged and smiled sadly. Amara wondered. She couldn't imagine what it would be like to be alone. Her house was always noisy. Her mom, her younger brother, and even their cat always filled the house with life. "It must be hard," she said quietly. "It's hard, but I'm used to it," Mary replied. "My joy is my garden. I grow vegetables, flowers. Sometimes I bake bread to keep me busy. And today I decided to bake an apple pie. I bought some apples. Do you like pie?" "Oh yes, my mom makes the best cinnamon pie," Amara replied excitedly. "Do you bake it yourself?" "Yes, by myself," Mary said proudly. "It makes me feel needed, just a little." They stopped for a moment to catch their breath. Mary leaned on the fence and looked at Amara with a gentle smile. "Are you always this kind? I can see there's something special about you." Amara blushed at those words. "I just think helping is the right thing to do. If I have the opportunity to make someone's day easier, why not do it?" Mary nodded, as if agreeing with the deep meaning of the girl's words. "If we had more people like you in the world, it would be a better place. Sometimes the simplest good deed can change a life." Those words made Amara think. She was silent, but her mind was spinning with thoughts of how important even simple attention to another person was. They continued on their way, and soon a small, cozy house with a white fence and a small garden showed up ahead. Mary smiled and pointed at it. "That's my house. See my flowers? I grow them myself." Amara looked with interest at the brightly colored flower beds outside the house. They looked as if someone had put their whole soul into them. "They're beautiful," the girl said, genuinely admiring. "Thank you, sweetheart," Mary replied. "You've done more for me today than you could have ever imagined. Come on, I'll put the bags down and you can take a little break." Amara didn't yet know that this simple moment would be the beginning of an amazing turn in her life. Amara walked with Mary to the small, cozy house. At the gate, her grandmother stopped to take her keys out of her coat pocket, but her bags prevented her from doing so easily. Amara noticed her predicament at once. "Let me hold the bags while you get the key," the girl offered easily, gently lifting the bags from Mary's hands. "Thank you, dear. You're just an angel." Grandma smiled as she opened the wicket. Her trembling hands still looked tired, but there was a flicker of warmth in her eyes at this simple gesture of help. They walked into the courtyard together, where there was a small table with clay pots and brightly colored flowers growing on either side of the path. Amara was enchanted by the place. Every detail seemed to speak of how much love and time Mary had put into her home. "This way, honey. Put the bags on the kitchen table if it's not too much trouble," Mary asked as she opened the door. The girl stepped inside, carefully placing the heavy bags on the wooden kitchen table. The room smelled of something homely and cozy, a mixture of vanilla and fresh-baked goods. Amara inhaled the aroma and smiled. She could already imagine her grandmother baking her apple pie. "There, everything's in place," Amara said warmly, turning around. Mary looked up at her, eyes slightly moistened. "You have no idea how much this means to me." "Thank you, my dear." But Amara only shrugged, smiling. "It's not hard at all. Just wanted to help. You've done so much of it yourself. This house, the garden, it's beautiful." Mary almost suggested that the girl stay for tea, but Amara had already taken a step toward the door. "I have to go. My mother's waiting at home," she said in an apologetic tone. "Wait, at least I'll do something for you," Mary exclaimed, taking a step forward. But Amara shook her head gently. "You don't have to, really. Just knowing that I was able to help you is already nice." With those words, the girl opened the door and stepped out onto the threshold, looking back at the older woman who stood, slightly confused but filled with gratitude. "Take care and don't carry the heavy stuff yourself, okay?" Amara said with a smile. "I promise, honey," Mary replied warmly. Amara waved and ran down the path, not expecting any reward or gratitude. Her heart was light and filled with joy at the simple act. She had no idea that this moment would leave a deep mark on Mary's heart and be the beginning of something truly amazing. Mary watched her for a long time, then sat down on a chair in her garden, feeling a warm spark of hope fill her soul. "What a wonderful girl," she whispered, determined that she would not let this act go unheeded. But Amara had already disappeared around the corner, thinking only of how important it was to help this grandmother. It didn't even occur to her that this day would change her life forever. Mary sat on the wooden bench by her garden with her hands around her teacup. Amara's movements were still before her eyes, confident, kind, so sincere. In her 78 years, she had rarely met people who helped just like that, without expectations or conditions. Her gaze fell on the flowers that swayed in the breeze, and she thought how often people pass by such flowers in life. After all, kindness is something fragile, rare, to be treasured. Amara reminded her that simple gestures can change not only the day, but the soul itself. "When was the last time I felt something like this?" Mary muttered to herself. She remembered her husband, Henry, who had always been a man of action. Henry was the one who helped everyone, whether it was a neighbor, a child with a bike, or a stranger on the street. He would say that girl is a treasure, she grinned, thinking about how Henry would approve of what Amara did. At that moment, her heart filled with determination. Mary couldn't just put this event behind her. This girl needs to know that her kindness is meaningful, that her act is something that inspires. She went into the house and took out a small notebook where she kept the numbers of her friends with whom she had been in contact for years. Among them was one man she had known since she was young, a successful businessman who ran a chain of car dealerships. John, that's who I want, Mary decided as she leafed through the contacts. Mary remembered how John had once told her that if she ever needed help, she could count on him. This moment seemed perfect. She dialed his number, and a few seconds later, she heard a familiar voice. Mary! How many years, how many winters, what can I do for you? Mary told John the story of Amara, of her kindness, of how the girl had not hesitated to help a stranger without expecting anything in return. She spoke with such warmth and gratitude that even over the phone you could feel how touched John was. You know, Mary, he said when she finished, it's rare. I want to do something for her. Just tell me what it takes. Mary smiled, feeling her heart fill with warmth. She's not expecting anything, John, but I want to show her that good things always come back. Maybe you can help me find a way? Oh, I have an idea, he replied enthusiastically. When Mary hung up the phone, her gaze fell on the garden again. She knew that Amara's act had not only changed her day, but had filled her heart with faith in people. The little girl was a reminder that the world is still full of good people, if only we are not afraid to see them. From that moment on, she knew Amara deserved not only gratitude, but real magic in return for her kind heart. Mary sat down at her phone, opening her contact notebook that held the memories of her life. It contained the numbers of people she'd crossed paths with at various stages of her long history. Among them were old friends, her late husband's partners, and people who, like her, appreciated sincere actions. Her first call was to John, a successful businessman and car dealership owner. Their conversation the day before had already hinted at the beginning of something amazing. John immediately responded to Mary's idea. Mary, I know how much you are touched by this girl's act, he said, and I agree that people like that need to feel how their kindness changes the world. Let me take this on. I know what to give. Mary smiled, but couldn't resist asking, John, what are you up to? Just don't overdo it. Don't worry, Mary. It won't just be a gift, but a symbol that her kindness is returned with double force. I'm sure you'll agree when you see it, he replied warmly. When Mary hung up the phone, her heart was filled with joy, but this was only the beginning. She decided to reach out to other friends to create something even bigger together. Her old friends from the local charity club supported the idea, offering to arrange a small surprise for Amara's family. Not only a gift, but a warm evening that would fill the girl's home with joy and laughter. Amara did more than just help you carry your bags, one friend remarked. She's an inspiration to us all. Why not make this day a celebration for her and her family? You're right, Mary agreed. She deserves more than just a thank you. That child has shown how much even a simple act of kindness can mean. While Mary was coordinating the plans, John was already in the process of preparing the main surprise. He decided that the best gift for the girl would be something luxurious, something that would emphasize her rare kindness. The Rolls Royce that stood in his car dealership came to mind. A car with an elegant design and a symbol of exclusivity. He made sure it was perfectly clean, adorned with a huge bow that would immediately attract attention. "Mary, don't worry. Everything will be ready by tomorrow morning," he said confidently as he called again to confirm the details. "Thank you, John," Mary replied, not holding back light tears. "You have no idea how much this means to me and to Amara." By nightfall, everything was prepared. Mary knew that the next morning, Amara and her family would be standing in front of the house in utter amazement. It was her way of saying thank you to the girl who had awakened in her a sincere belief in goodness. Mary sat at the window, looking at the stars, thinking about how important it was for her not only to thank Amara, but to remind everyone around her that kindness always comes back, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. The morning was clear and sunny. Amara woke up to the familiar sound of her mom talking in the kitchen. It smelled like something delicious, perhaps her mother's pancakes. The girl stretched and ran out of the room, thinking only about how to start her usual day. Nothing foretold that something absolutely incredible was cooking outside her house. On the street, right in front of their small, cozy house, a shiny Rolls Royce with a huge red bow attracted the attention of passers-by. The courier, in an elegant suit, was carefully checking the final touch, the note attached to the bow. He smiled, imagining the effect the gift would have. Amara was quietly eating her breakfast while her little brother played in the corner. But the calm was broken by a loud knock on the door. Who could that be so early? Amara's mom asked in surprise, wiping her hands on her apron and heading for the door. When the door opened, the very same delivery man stood in front of her. His smile was so wide that she didn't even notice the car behind her at first. "Good morning. This is a delivery for Ms. Amara," he said, tilting his head slightly. "For whom?" "For Amara," the mom interjected, looking back confusedly to where her daughter was already peeking out from around the corner. "I'm Amara." The girl approached cautiously, still holding the piece of pancake in her hand. "Then this is for you," the delivery man said, stepping aside so she could see the car. For a moment, there was silence in the courtyard. Amara and her mother stood frozen, staring at the luxurious car gleaming in the sun. The red bow on the hood swayed in the breeze, as if to emphasize the importance of the moment. "There's some kind of mistake," Mom muttered, shaking her head, but the courier smiled and held out the note to Amara. "No mistake, miss. This is a thank you for your kind heart." The girl, shaking with excitement, opened the note. It was written in neat handwriting. "Dear Amara, your act of kindness changed my day and gave me faith in people. May this gift remind you that kindness always comes back. Love, Mary." Is this because of yesterday?" Amara whispered, still not believing her eyes. "Mom, is it true?" She turned to her stunned mom, who only nodded silently. Neighbors who heard the noise began to look out of their windows. Some even went out into the yard. Soon, people gathered around, discussing the incredible event. "That's the most beautiful car I've ever seen," exclaimed one of the neighborhood boys. Amara, however, still stood there, stunned, not realizing how a simple act of kindness had led to something so incredible. "But I just helped," she whispered, turning to her mom. "That's exactly why, dear," Mom replied quietly, hugging her. You did it from the bottom of your heart, expecting nothing in return. That's why it's so special. The courier waited politely until all emotion had subsided, then held out the keys. The car is yours, miss. I hope it will always remind you that a good heart is the most precious thing we have. This day was a real celebration for Amara and her family, filled with joy, wonder, and the realization that good things always come back. The Rolls Royce stood in the yard as a symbol that even the simplest act can change the world. The morning began as usual. Sunlight streamed through the curtains. Birds chirped outside the window, and the kitchen smelled like the fresh pancakes Amara's mother made every Sunday. She didn't know yet that this day would change her life. Amara, breakfast is ready, Mom called out from the kitchen. The girl, still a little sleepy, walked slowly down the stairs. Her little brother was already enjoying his pancakes, and her mother was busy at the stove. Everything was as quiet as ever. But suddenly, there was a noise outside the window, neighbors talking, soft exclamations of surprise. It was strange, for their street was usually quiet. Amara went to the window to look and saw something that took her breath away. Mom, what's that? She exclaimed, looking at the shiny Rolls Royce with a huge red bow standing right in front of their house. What are you talking about, honey? Mom set the pan down and walked to the window. When she saw the car, she froze. Is this some kind of joke? She muttered, already moving toward the door. Amara, her mom, and her little brother ran out into the yard. The car, gleaming in the sun, looked like something out of a movie or a fairy tale. A red bow swayed slightly in the wind, and an elegant man in a courier's uniform stood beside it. He held an envelope and keys in his hands. Good morning. This is a delivery for Ms. Amara, he announced politely. Amara's mom opened her eyes wide. This is some kind of mistake. We didn't order anything. But the courier only smiled and held out the note to Amara. No, madam, this is most definitely for your daughter. Amara, still not believing what was happening, gingerly picked up the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a small note. Dear Amara, your kindness has touched my heart. You have proven that sincere acts can change lives. May this gift be a reminder that the world is full of grateful people. Love, Mary. Mary, that's the grandmother I helped yesterday, Amara said, looking back at her mom, who now looked shocked too. You mean this is all about you carrying her bags home? Mom interjected in surprise. Yeah, I was just helping, Amara replied, still not understanding how her simple act could lead to such a thing. Neighbors began to gather around, talking among themselves. Some even clapped, others took pictures. This is incredible, exclaimed one of the neighbors. The courier handed the keys to the girl and smiled warmly. This is yours now, Ms. Amara. I hope this car will remind you that a good heart is most appreciated. But I didn't do anything special, Amara said quietly, clutching her keys in her hands. You've done more than you realize, her mom replied, hugging her. You gave someone hope, and that's the most precious thing you can give. Amara looked at the car, then at her mom and brother. Her heart was full of emotions, surprise, joy, but most of all, gratitude that kindness always comes back. This moment was the beginning of a new day for Amara's family, full of the realization that even the smallest gesture can change a life at the most unexpected moment. Amara was still standing in the yard, holding the keys to the gleaming Rolls Royce. She couldn't believe the gift was for her. But another detail caught her attention. An envelope neatly attached to a huge red bow on the hood of the car. "There's something else in there," Amara said, pointing to the envelope. Her mother nodded, and the girl walked carefully to the car. Her fingers trembled slightly as she removed the envelope from the bow. It was thick, gold embossed, and on it was written only her name, Amara. She opened the envelope, and inside was a note written in neat, slightly old-fashioned handwriting. Amara began to read aloud, her voice quiet but confident. "Dear Amara, when you stopped to help me carry my heavy bags, you had no idea how much your act changed my day. In that moment, I felt not only relieved, but also that kindness is still alive in this world. You could have just walked by like the others did, but you chose to stop. You chose to give me the attention and care I needed. This car is just a symbol of how much your kindness has touched me. I want you to always remember that even the simplest good deed can be a light in someone's life. With love and gratitude, Mary." When Amara finished reading, there was silence in the courtyard. Her mother wiped away the tears that had unnoticeably come to her eyes. Her little brother, usually noisy and restless, just stared at her in wonder. "Is that really what she thinks of me?" Amara asked quietly, looking at her mom. "Of course, sweetheart," Mom said, putting her arm around her shoulders. "You've always been kind, but now you see what it means to other people." The neighbors standing around her began to clap, someone shouting words of approval. Amara blushed at the attention, but her heart was filled with warmth. She realized that her act was small, but to Mary it had become something big. The girl looked at the note again, smiled, and thought she would keep it always as a reminder that kindness really does change lives. Amara stood beside the car, hugging the note like a most precious treasure. She reread Mary's words over and over again, her face glowing with joy. It was more than a gift to her. It was an acknowledgement of her kindness, a confirmation that her act had made a difference. Mom stepped closer and pulled Amara close to her. Her voice was soft but full of emotion. "Amara, you did something incredible. You didn't even think about yourself. You just helped as much as you could. And look what came out of it. You showed us all how important it is to be kind." My younger brother, who was only 6 years old, was running around the car, grinning widely. "Are we going to ride in such a big car now?" he exclaimed, waving his arms. Mom laughed, rubbed his curly head, and said, "First, little one, you have to learn to sit still for at least 5 minutes." Amara smiled as she looked at her brother, but her thoughts were focused on something else. Her act had been so simple, so natural. She remembered the moment she'd seen Mary on the street, tired, carrying heavy bags. She just felt she couldn't pass by. "Mom," she said quietly but confidently, "I didn't do anything special, did I? I just helped because I knew it was the right thing to do." Her mom took her hands and looked into her eyes. Sometimes a simple good deed is the most important thing we can do. It takes no effort or wealth, but it can leave a mark on a lifetime. Look at yourself now. Look at how much it meant to Mary. Neighbors began to congratulate the family. Some brought flowers, some just smiled and said kind words. Amara felt a little awkward from such attention, but she couldn't help smiling back. Her heart was overflowing with joy. "You deserve it, Amara," said the neighbor, an older man with a kind smile. "People like you need to be cherished." Her younger brother suddenly stopped and, looking at her, said seriously, "I want to help people like you, too, Amara." These words touched the girl to the core. She realized that her act had inspired not only Mary, but also her own family. In the evening, when everyone had calmed down a little, Amara sat on the porch with her mother. The two of them looked up at the stars, and the girl, without taking her eyes off the sky, said, "Mommy, I want to always remember this day. It showed me that kindness really can change lives." Her mom smiled, hugged her, and said, "And let this be the beginning for you. Don't stop, Amara. The world needs people like you." This night was not just a celebration for them, but a reminder of how important good deeds are, even if they seem very small. Amara's family rejoiced not only in the car, but also in the fact that their lives were filled with meaning and inspiration. The day after the incredible surprise, Amara sat in the courtyard, quietly reflecting on everything that had happened. The Rolls Royce was still standing in the sunlight, attracting stares from passers-by. But Amara's mind was no longer on the gift, but on what it meant. She flipped through the note from Mary, reading the words of gratitude over and over again. The words had touched her more deeply than she had expected. She wondered, did all this really happen just because I helped carry a few bags? Her mom, watching her daughter from the window, noticed her brooding and came over, sitting down next to her. "What are you thinking about, sweetheart?" she asked, running her hand affectionately over her shoulder. "Mom," Amara began, still looking at the note, I did what anyone would do, right? Why does it matter so much? Why did Mary say I changed her day?" Mom smiled, looked at the note, and replied, "Amara, people often think that big changes require big actions. But sometimes, even a small gesture can do more than you realize. You didn't just carry her bags. You made her feel like she was noticed, that her hardship mattered to someone. That's what makes us human." Those words brought a slight smile to Amara's face. She remembered the look on Mary's face when they reached her house. Her grandmother had looked tired, but at that moment, there was a spark in her eyes that seemed long gone. Amara thought about how often the people around her might have needed help, but no one noticed them. She remembered how sometimes at school, her classmates laughed at a boy who couldn't answer a teacher's question, or how a girl from a neighboring house sat alone during the holidays. "Mom, I think I want to do more," Amara said suddenly, turning to her. "More?" Mom interjected, looking at her daughter curiously. "Yes, I want to help people, not for the gifts, of course," she laughed, waving her hand toward the car, "but because it's the right thing to do, because it makes them happy. And you know, it makes me happy too." Mom nodded, proud of her daughter. "You've already taken the first step, Amara, but the world really can be a better place if everyone does just a little. I'm sure you'll find a way to do even more." In that moment, Amara realized that kindness was not only an action, but a choice. She remembered how easily she could have walked past Mary that day, citing fatigue or busyness, but she stopped, and that choice changed everything. "Mom, I don't think I'm going to pass anymore," she said firmly, looking into her mother's eyes. "And that, my dear, is the most important lesson you could have learned," Mom replied, hugging her. Amara smiled, feeling something new stirring inside her. She saw the world differently now. Helping others was no longer just an act. It had become her calling. A few days later, the story of Amara and her incredible gift began to spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors talked about the kind girl who simply helped an elderly woman and ended up receiving a Rolls Royce as a token of gratitude. But beyond the gift, there was more to this story: sincerity, humanity, and a reminder that the world is still full of kind people. A local newspaper found out about the incident and decided to write an article about it. The journalist came to Amara's house to talk to her and her mother. The questions were simple, but every word of the girl sounded sincere and deep. "Why did you help her?" the journalist asked. Amara smiled, slightly embarrassed. "I could just see that she was having a hard time. It didn't seem right for me to pass it by. I didn't think it was anything big. I just wanted to help," she replied. "How does it make you feel to receive such a gift?" The girl thought for a moment before answering. "It was amazing. But what struck me the most was that my help meant so much to her. It made me realize how important it is to notice other people and their needs." These simple words moved the journalist. In the article, he wrote, "Amara's story is a reminder for all of us that goodness takes no effort, but it has the power to change lives. And sometimes it comes back in the most unexpected ways." The article went viral on the internet, and many people were inspired by Amara's action. Some started helping their neighbors. Others donated time to charity. Even the children at Amara's school stopped teasing those who needed support, inspired by her example. And Amara herself continued to live her normal life, but with a new understanding. Every time she saw someone who needed help, whether it was a neighbor, an old man with a cane, or even just a sad classmate, she stopped to offer her support. The story of Amara and her kind heart has become more than just a story. It became a reminder to all of us. Good things always come back, sometimes in the form of a huge Rolls Royce, and sometimes in the form of a smile, a grateful look, or a changed fate. And that lesson Amara learned has stayed with her forever, because she realized that the power of kindness is not to get something in return, but to change the world one act at a time. This story teaches us that kindness is not just a gesture, but a powerful force that can change lives. It reminds us that the simplest of acts, done sincerely and without expectation, can make a huge difference to others. In helping an elderly woman with her bags, Amara may not have realized how much her action would touch this grandmother's heart, but it was her selfless desire to help that started a chain of events that changed not only both of them, but inspired everyone around them. History shows that being attentive to people, noticing their difficulties, and offering help is what makes us truly human. We live in a world where we are often in a hurry, ignore other people's needs, and forget that each of us can be a source of light for another. But it is acts like Amara's that remind us that attention and care can make the difference for those in need. This story also teaches us the importance of gratitude. The elderly woman, after receiving help, not only recognized the good heart of the girl, but did her best to show how her act changed her day. Gratitude expressed in such a meaningful way proves that goodness always comes back, sometimes in the most unexpected and unbelievable forms. The story also inspires us to think about how our actions affect the world around us. Amara didn't expect reward or recognition. She was motivated only by a desire to help. But her story showed that even one small act can set off a chain of inspiration, causing others to become kinder, more caring, and more human. Finally, this story reminds us that kindness is not just an action, but a choice. We all face situations every day where we can choose to care or we can choose to pass by. Amara chose to help, and her choice is an example to all who recognize this story. It is a reminder that it is through small moments like this that we create a world we want to live in. What do you think about this story? Write in the comments how it inspired you and what kind of acts of kindness you have done in your life. Maybe you've helped a stranger, supported a friend, or just given someone a smile. Tell us, because your experience can inspire others to do good deeds. Let's share stories that make the world a better place.